That's most definitely what's up.
Shout out to the chess club. We're aiming for a controversial 7 out of 10.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm vibing.
Death to all of them.
That's most definitely what's up.
But something's wrong with the game. We're aiming for a controversial 7 out of 10. Shout out to the chess club.
One move in bed that makes
Welcome everyone. We are here to vibe, to chill, to rock and roll together, singing and dancing all the way, or talking about video games. You know, that's what we do. Rocking and rolling.
Shout out to the chess club.
Damn right. Damn right. Welcome everybody. How we doing? How we doing? Good? Hopefully. Yeah, the hawk. Spit on that thing. Yeah, it's oh man, oh god. Yeah, I mean we had to. I don't know what you want from me. Oh man. Assassin's Creed new statue coming for the shelf this fall. I would expect it because I'm a spoiled brat. Ubisoft very generously often sends me collector's editions for stuff, so I would not be surprised if it shows up. I've not pre-ordered it, but like I didn't pre-order any of like almost any of the other ones that are surrounding me. A lot of them I found or collected. A lot of brands will also send them. I've had to get rid of a lot of collector's edition statues though, because I just don't have enough room. So every once in a while I'll do a giveaway where a viewer gets to win the statues and things. Yeah. Anyway. Hello, Luke. Just got back from the beach. My 9-month-old first time. Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, my kiddos are pretty sick today. They're all, you can probably hear it in my voice too. I'm a little congested and stuff. There's just something in the air. So we're dealing with that. And then Friday. So basically like we're going on this vacation in like a week where we're going to go into the middle of nowhere and spend a week on a lake, which is always awesome. We do it every year. And for that, of course, we can't bring our 2 cats to a lake like 1,000 miles away, however far it is. So we're gonna board them. There's this place that specifically takes care of just cats. They do a great job. They are experts with cats. So we board them there whenever we go on long trips. But they need all their shots and stuff up to date. So I've been on Friday, I took the cats to the vet to get them, updated all their shots before they do that. But Mr. Finley, who you guys have seen, are like he's the big white cat, the big one. He is the sweetest little ball of joy to me. To anybody else he views as like a threat or somebody he doesn't trust, he is a nightmare. Like he is a little monster. And so I brought him and Hermione to the vet. They got Hermione her shots. And then when it came to Finley, the vet, like the lady that does this for a living, she was like, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to give him his shots today. So I think we should wait and we'll send you home with some like sedatives that you'll give him a few hours before you bring him in. And that should make him more manageable. I just drove him all the way here, but okay. Because it's like 30-40 minutes away. So after stream today, I've got to take Finley back in to the vet, and hopefully the sedative they gave him is going to dope him up enough that he's fine. She's like, it's really common. She said she does it with her cats. Like sometimes when they go on road trips, they just have to do it if they're driving a long way. Because Finley's one of those cats. He's one of those animals that just cannot handle the car. Like his little cat brain just does not compute with it. He expels everything through every orifice. Like it just does not work for him. So I'm hoping the drug works and dopes him up enough that he doesn't just hate the car, and he can kind of relax a little bit, but we'll see. So that being said, today will probably be a bit of a shorter stream, but that's because, for one, I've got to get Finley drugged up and taken to the vet, and then I am in active filming for the big Starfield video, so we're working on that because we hope to have that up soon. Wonder if it's motion sickness. I think so. I mean, Hermione's fine, but dear God Almighty, Finley, no baby. Okay. There we go. Yeah, we did get a new Space Marine trailer. We got some more Fallout from the paid mods thing, so we can talk about that. It's gonna be good. Cornelius, do you fully script out all your videos or just rough outline and then ramble? I mean, as I'm sure you could guess, there's a lot of rambling involved, but it depends on the video, honestly. And usually it's like, it's a mix. So like for this big Starfield video we're doing, there's parts of it that are fully written out word for word, where I'm going to be just reading the script and doing that. There's other parts where I have a bullet point and then I'm like, elaborate. So if it's something I'm confident I can just fill in, or if it's me telling a story or something, where it's like, at one point I mentioned that Todd Howard went to E3 and did that panel with Elon Musk. So I wrote elaborate because I was actually there, and I think it makes more sense for me to just speak off the cuff about that actual experience than type it out. So it's a mix. Work smarter, not harder, right? If you don't need to type something out word for word, that's fine. Oh yeah, Samuel, that's a good question over on Twitch. What's your opinion of the Shadow of the Erdtree bosses? This is too groovy for me, this music. I'm sorry. This is too groovy. Let's go Skyrim lo-fi beats. There we go. So let me look up Steam Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Not premium bundle. I just want Shadow of the Erdtree. So, news segment. So, in case you've somehow missed it, there has been a bit of sass involved with Shadow of the Erdtree. Basically, it's gotten mass downvoted to the point where now it's sitting at mixed. Only 66% of the reviews on Steam are positive. Now, this is for two reasons, as far as I can tell, looking through these reviews. For one, people are saying that it's too hard. Others are mentioning that performance is terrible. Now, I said in my video that I could not play this on PC because performance was so terrible. People called me a hater, said I was always making stuff up to try and prove that something's bad or something. I don't really understand it, but apparently I was faking it, even though, let me show you. Is this it? I think this is. Let me just get the clip. Yeah, I am not joking. This is the footage I have from trying to play it on PC. So this is an early, this is the starting area, and you can see as I'm running, just watch the frame graph in the top left, okay? It's unbelievable that this launched in this state. This is why I've always been like, no, From Software, they're not perfect. Their PC performance is never that great. And for whatever reason, it seems that the DLC specifically struggles with, yeah, this is running in real time. I'm not dropping frames. What you're seeing is the recording recorded on a separate PC. And it runs like that. it's wild. So like, you know, I actually try combat, you know, there's a spider in here and I'm going to try swinging at the spider and watch what happens with the frames as we're moving through. Like, look at that. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. So a lot of people went back to the DLC, I think having upgraded their computer in the last 2 years. And for whatever reason, the DLC and Elden Ring in general struggles with high-end Intel chips that have efficiency cores or E-cores. And I watched a whole breakdown from somebody way, way smarter than me. Look at that one. Oh God, full freeze. Look at that. And then, oh, it's trying. There we go. So I watched this video from somebody way smarter than me, and they said that basically what this is that for whatever reason, the From Software engine that they use for Elden Ring cannot distinguish between E cores and like P cores, I think is what they're called, performance cores versus efficiency cores. And so they will send the game's calculations to the efficiency cores, which are only meant for like slow background tasks in like Microsoft Word. Like it's not, those cores are not for high intensity tasks like a video game, not at all. But the engine for this game and DLC can't tell the difference and treats them the same. So there'll be moments where the game runs great, and then there's other moments where it runs like absolute garbage. And what's weird is because of how this affects it, it only really impacts those that are playing on high-end or newer PCs that have those Intel chips with E-cores. So funnily enough, like people running older rigs or cheaper rigs are not having hardly any problems with the DLC. Performance is great. But if you're playing on a more expensive PC and you expect more, you're actually having more trouble with it, which is wild. But like, this is why I record on a separate PC and I get this footage, because like you can't really argue with this. Like the drivers are up to date. The footage is here. I worked with them on figuring out what the hell is going on here. And they were like, yeah, well, you know, it's an issue that they're working to resolve. They've been saying that for 2 years, by the way, because the original game didn't run this bad, but it was also super stuttery. So I think like if you are playing on Steam and you are having these types of performance issues, absolutely you should refund it. This is not playable in a game that requires like frame accurate dodges and parries and stuff. Like when, like, look at that. How are you supposed to do like a boss fight when it's doing that? I would not consider this to be playable, which is why, you know, they sent me the review code and I was like, thank you, I'm so excited. And I booted it up to try and do this, and like this is what I was faced with. So thankfully they sent a PlayStation code a day or two later to work through. But it's just ridiculous that this is like, this is the what you can get if you are running on a super high-end PC, well above the recommended specs, beyond like even the max specs, and you get this level of performance on a $40 DLC. It's wild. It's wild. So if these people are downvoting the DLC for those performance issues because they're experiencing this level of difficulty with it, that I think is fair. There are others, though, that are downvoting the game because they say that it is too difficult. And that I find to be a little more hilarious. And I've seen kind of two flavors of this. There are some that are going through this DLC, making it unnecessarily difficult on themselves. So they're going through and like trying to use a magic build, which is just not going to work. But they're trying to do that. And at the same time, they're not using any summons of any kind. Not even just like, I'm not saying you have to use mimic tiers or anything. Like you can use just the 3 rabid dogs, whatever you want, but just something to pull aggro. They're not using any of that, so they're going to have a bad time. I do think a lot of these bosses were designed around using something to pull aggro for certain types of builds. If you're using magic, you need to use summons to pull aggro away from you because it has longer casting times, and that's just how it is. I'm sure there's videos of people who are stupid good at the game and can do it without that. But it seems like for most builds that use magic, you need something to pull aggro away from you. But if you don't want to use any of the mimics, or not mimics, any of the summons, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. So then I don't feel bad if you're struggling with the game, if it's difficult, because it's like, yeah, you kind of did that to yourself. Beyond that, it is difficult. It is tough. But that's what From Software DLCs are. And I think, you know, somebody I saw on X was like, they were saying, well, you know, I think the reason that there's been such a reaction to the difficulties because there's so many new players that are playing this DLC who have never played a From Software DLC before. And I think that that's accurate. I think Elden Ring was so big that a ton of people who had never played a From Software game before played it, and they saw what the game was like, and they might have been able to go through with a Sword of Night and Flame or Rivers of Blood and the Mimic tier, and they had a, you know, it's a challenging game, but it was not crushing. Now with the DLC, they're experiencing what crushing is like. It's rough. It's rough. Yeah, C-Rot, the one thing that, so all the bosses, and I'm not certain I've done all of the side bosses, but all the main bosses are pretty well done. I don't remember any time I was like, that was BS. You know, there's no real BS once you get used to it. Mesmer, that boy, his fight, if you're close to the edge of the arena, the camera clips into the floor a lot, which sucks. But once you move away from the edge of the arena, which you probably shouldn't be by anyways, then you're fine. But as for the DLC, I mean, I think it should be called Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree iframes. Like that to me is what it should be called. Because you're right, there are a ton of big AoE attacks, like Samuel says in Twitch chat. I was watching a couple of the bosses yesterday, and it does seem like the bosses have a lot of special AoE attacks and overhead attacks that are hard to follow with the lock-on. Yeah, the AoEs specifically, a lot of the later bosses have huge AoEs, and for those, it's easy to deal with once you understand, oh, if I roll into it, I can use the iframes, which are just like invincibility frames, where while you're rolling, you just can't take damage. So if you roll into that AoE, you can often just bypass it, and then it gets way, way easier. If you're trying to outrun the AoE, you're gonna have a bad time. So with a lot of this, like, you could just whittle it down. It's like, well, it's a skill issue, but it's also, for a lot of people, it seems to be a build issue. A lot of people had cheesy builds that worked for most bosses in the base game, and then they've tried to bring that into the DLC, and From Software was like, no, we've designed this in a way to specifically punish those cheesy builds. So, it's, I mean, I've had a really good time with it. I understand why some people are perhaps a little shell-shocked by it, because if you had a decent time on the base game because you had a really powerful, borderline broken build, and then you come into the DLC and they've just taken steps to be like, okay, all that stuff you had that was super broken, yeah, it just doesn't really work anymore. Figure it out again. I can see why some people are like pissed, but is any DLC boss considered harder than Millennia by the community? Without a doubt. Without a doubt, the final boss of this DLC, who I will not name to avoid spoilers, but the final boss is the hardest boss I've ever come across in any From Software game, full stop, DLCs included. Maybe I'm just a pansy or something, but to me, that last boss is ridiculous. Like, it will humble you so good. Like, if you think the DLC is hard now and you're not at the final boss, good God almighty, just wait. Gotta give that final boss the hook. Dude, it's madness. Yeah, Flynn, yes, very much so. I cannot get even close to killing. Yeah, It's like the kind of boss where you put the controller down and you get up and walk away and you're like, is this even fun? What am I even doing? What am I even doing with my life? You know, it's good. But yeah, if you cruise through the DLC, you won't cruise through that. I have a feeling that will be the great humbling. So all told, I've enjoyed the DLC. I'm going to go through it again. I went through it. How I tend to play these games is I try to go through it the first time as most people, like as the average gamer would. So if I'm going to like review it or talk about it, I want to do that from the perspective of like your average gamer who might be seeing the video. So like, for example, in most games, that means I play it on whatever the default difficulty is. I'm not going to play through like The Last of Us on Grounded for my first run and then complain that the game is really hard, because that wouldn't make any sense. It's like, well, they gave you the ability to play it and they recommended playing it this way, but then you didn't. And with Elden Ring, it's a similar thing where it's like, well, they give you all of these summons, and I think most average players use summons. So I experimented with a bunch of the summons from the base game and DLC to see if there were any cool ways to break stuff. But again, it just seems like a lot of these bosses have been built in a way where it's sort of presumed you will use something to pull the aggression of the boss somewhere else, so that you can get some damage in. You can take it front on, like, but that's like playing on Grounded, you know, it's gonna crush you. Specifically that final boss, God almighty. Like, oh, it's crazy. Yeah, I think a lot of the base game bosses were designed in a way where it was not assumed, but they were built in a way where they were kind of balanced around you taking it on 1v1 with no summons or any cooperators or anything like that. The DLC, on the flip side, there's a handful of bosses that seem to be balanced around you using either cooperative like AI or friends or summons, because otherwise they're just ridiculous. So I have to think that they probably balanced it around that way. But I have no doubt they're going to be doing some balancing updates and stuff over the next probably couple of weeks, just like they did with the base game, where they redid a bunch of balancing and fixed this boss, made this boss way harder, and then balanced it back the other way. And so I think it's just a matter of time before they start to do that. And mark my words now, they're going to nerf that final boss fight, I think, in a couple of ways. I think they're going to increase the time before his first attack, because it's so ridiculous. You basically walk through the fog door, and unless you immediately roll, you're just done. Can you summon to the final boss? Yeah, but the attacks are so fast that you probably can't get it off to even summon it without dying, which is really funny. Yeah, his second phase is where it's like where it becomes the most difficult boss I think they've ever made. It's insane. G Mendez, I've never been into meta builds anyways. But it sounds like the DLC blatantly discourages it, which sounds cool to me. Yeah, I think it's just they shake it up, and there's so many varied bosses that have different immunities, resistances, and strengths, that it just doesn't make sense to have one build that is fully min-maxed in one way over the other. And the base game sort of had that. Like my buddy Caleb, he went through the base game with a holy build. Then you get to the final boss of the base game, and it's just like, holy damage? Nope. So you're just kind of screwed. And that's always going to be a thing. Even like we did a D&D session last night. Like at one point, well, this was last week, but let's see, 5E. There we go. But at one point, I had the party fight what's called a Rakshasa. And Rakshasas are interesting, but they hard counter magic users. So limited magic immunity. The Rakshasa can't be affected or detected by spells of 6th level or lower unless it wishes to be. And it has advantage on saving throws against all other spells and magical effects. So just straight up, if your party has a lot of spellcasters, Sucks to suck, man. Like, this thing just hard counters it. Now, if you're a melee class or character, this guy's not that hard to deal with. Like, you just get in there, you slap, slap, slappity slap, and you do what you got to do. But if you are min-maxed and you are exclusively a spellcaster and you only use magic, this is gonna suck because you basically won't be able to do anything. And Elden Ring in the base game and in the DLC has that. The base game, it was a little less varied, so you could get through most of the game, if not all the game, with a meta build, and it was fine. Like Rivers of Blood, yeah, you can get through the whole game just fine. Some bosses might not stack up bleed, but you deal enough damage, it doesn't really matter. But in the DLC, there's a lot of varied enemies and bosses where one might just be totally immune to bleed. The next is totally immune to like anything stagger related. It just has such high poise, it doesn't matter. You can't ever stun it. You know, I can understand why people are frustrated by it, but it's a little funny to me to see how like so many people just all of a sudden realizing, wait, this is like ridiculously difficult. It's like, yep, that's what their DLCs are. The assumption is if you got through the base game, you kind of earned the right to try the DLC, and they're like, okay, yeah, give it a shot. But this is where, you know, the boys become men, as it were. You gotta earn that place. Can you respec? Yeah, you can respec with larval tears and do that. With the DLC, I would love to know the stats. I would guess probably the majority of people respec at least once as they run through the DLC. That would be my suggestion. Yeah, Old Hunters was super hard. Yeah. Andrew, I've had to switch weapons more than in any FromSoft game, and I love it. Yeah, I kind of appreciate it. Like Sekiro, they were like, okay, well, we're going to remove all of that by giving you one weapon that you work through the whole game with. So you just don't think about that. It's purely about the skill with that weapon. Everybody's on the same level playing field. With Elden Ring, in the base game, you could get through with one build most of the bosses, if not all of them. And then with the DLC, they're like, no, these bosses are so varied, you're going to have to like basically create a meta build per major capstone boss. Like for Mesmer, I totally redid my whole build because I had a weapon that was dealing a little bit of fire damage. Not recommended because he's just like, nope. So I respec for Mesmer to get through that fight. And then for like another fight after that I won't spoil, there's another respec I had to do because I was really slow and there were so many attacks coming in at me from 2 or 3 directions that I just had to respec into something faster. So that's where I can appreciate it. Are the larval tiers still limited? Yes. As far as I know, I don't think you can buy them, but there are some more. So I don't know how many total there are, but yeah. Excuse me. What was my new build for Mesmer? My build for Mesmer that got me through it was, I noticed he did this thing where he like lunged and then would backstep by a couple steps, but still relatively close to me. So what I did is I respect and built my new build around the Malekith's Black Blade and all of that. And so then I could do his weapon art, which stabs the ground and has that big kind of spherical AoE, and he would get caught in it after that lunge. So you dodge the lunge, do that, stab it, and then it still hits him. So that worked wonders for the second phase, especially after, you know, that thing kind of transforms and then stuff comes at you. Then you do that while you have like 2 seconds before he gets aggroed again. It worked well. Yeah, what's the Hak Twa build? Yeah. That's for the next DLC. Do you have a favorite weapon DLC so far? I love the perfumes, honestly. I think the perfumes are really fun. Very different than anything I've ever used before in any of these games, but Samuel, a lot of the issue seems like guys who won't use spirits and summons. I don't know the argument for or against that as far as design for bosses goes. Just a lot of people are from the old days of like Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, where you could like summon a cooperator, but even that was seen as like, okay, if you can't get the boss done, that's what you got to do. Then you summon it. But with this, like with Elden Ring, they added summons and they pretty clearly have designed entire boss fights around it. Like Radon in the base game is literally like themed around calling in cooperators. That's like the whole premise of the fight, is that you summon all of them and then they all charge up to them at once. So at that point, if somebody is going to intentionally avoid using those and then they're going to complain about the game being hard, like I don't really feel that bad, because well, they did clearly meant for you to engage with those. It's the same thing like if you're playing like a game like Bloodborne and you don't want to use any secondary items, like you don't want to use beast blood pellets to increase your damage buildup on successive attacks. It's like, okay, like you don't have to use that, sure, but you just made the game a lot harder on yourself. Like the same thing, like I know some people, they don't like using the like fire wax or whatever to give their weapon fire damage. Like, yeah, I don't want to use that. I think it's cheating or it's easy mode. I'm like, well, it's by definition not cheating because it's in the game. They put it in there. Like just because, yeah, kind of like you're saying, Faye, like just because you might have an ego that prevents you from using a tool the devs gave you doesn't mean that therefore everyone who uses that tool is a pussy. You know, like you're allowed to use the tools the devs give you. If you don't want to, more power to you. If you can get through this DLC, no summons, no secondary items, no respecking, like mad props, dude. I will call you the get good king, because you will be. But if you're then going to go after people that did respec, did use summons, did use secondary items, whatever, like get a life. You know, like get a life. Yeah, like if you're using cheats and you're like, yeah, so the game was just kind of hard, so I went in and I used a cheat that reduces the boss's health to 10% of its natural total. It's like, okay, well, now we can tease you for like, that's fair. But when you're using tools the devs gave you in the game, and there is no easy toggle, like it's just different tools that they give you. If you're using those tools, like, no, you're just as valid for getting through it as anybody else. Like, I don't think you should feel bad. Yeah, Taylor, yeah, cheating, aka figuring out the strengths and weaknesses of a boss, then using specific items to counter them. Such an unhinged take. It's like in these games, the bosses are so crazy good at cheesing the player. Like they have ridiculous amounts of health, crazy high damage. Like they're very, very powerful. So I don't have any problem cheesing the bosses. Like if you find a cool way to beat the boss in a fast way, good for you, man. Like I saw some of those builds from the base game where people are like one-shotting major bosses, or they're able to just do one attack. Usually it's magic build stuff, but they do one attack that just drains the health bar instantly. Like if you figure that out, good on ya. But I bet there's going to be another boss where that doesn't work, right? It's all just min-maxing.
Super chat. I summon other players to help me beat bosses when I am struggling. Works every time.
Yeah, and I think that's like the devs gave you those tools to use. Like you don't have to use the tools if you don't want to, but I don't think you can complain if other people are using the tools. I think that's my broader point. Yeah, they literally made a new upgrade section for your summons and people think you aren't supposed to use them. Like what? Yeah, Drave, it's just the anti-summon thing is weird, because I even saw an interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki. I almost said Miyamoto. With Hidetaka Miyazaki, where he was asked about summons, and he said, well, we thought it was a really cool way to add some dynamics to the fights, because, you know, now it's not just you versus the boss. It could be you and then three little, wolves chasing after the boss, or you and an exact carbon copy of you. It could be you and this and that. And there's cool ways that you can use it where, like, you could have one weapon equipped do the mimic tier summon, and then you swap weapons after it's been summoned. So now you have two different weapons that maybe have different AoE effects that are going on at the same time. There's all sorts of cool ways you can build on it. But a lot of the like get good purist community has decided that that's not permitted. And it's like, okay, cool. But I don't think you should be going after, you know, Joe Schmo who just got off his shift, you know, working a 12-hour day. He comes home, wants to play Elden Ring's DLC, and then he used a summon, and therefore you're going to tease him for that? Like, dry up, dude. What's more difficult, base game or the DLC? 2/3 the way through the DLC, I would have said the base game. Last third of the DLC, it's probably some of the most difficult stuff that From Software's ever done. That's probably what I would say. On the other side, there's people complaining about the difficulty like Asmongold. What do you mean? Like just saying it's hard? Like it's too hard? Obviously, there's been times when From Software bosses have gotten too hard, even according to From Software, where like for Melania, they did that update where they screwed it up. And they made it, because she has an attack where whenever she like lands it and deals damage, she heals for what she deals. It's a cool concept. Like, okay, so don't get hit by that specific attack, right? But they screwed it up in a patch and an update that made it so whenever she made an attack, whether it connected or not, she would heal. So you do like the fight, you get half of her health bar down, and then she'd do this big flurry, and it would just fill all the way back up. And it was like, oh, that feels bad, man. Oh. So at that point, even From Software was like, okay, yeah, that's too difficult. We're going to fix it. So there's times where From Software will go in, and I don't know what their metrics are. They probably have some sort of way of grading difficulty of a boss and figuring out when it's too hard or too easy. So I'm not sure how they decide when something has crossed that line, but I'm sure they have internal metrics at this point after a decade, 2 decades of doing this. Like, I'm sure they have their own metrics for it, but I think everything that's in the game now is manageable and is doable. You just might not be able to cheese each boss the same way.
$5 through Super Chat. If Kai Cenat can do it, anyone can.
I mean, Kai just goes, like, he just runs at the wall until he breaks through. Like, yeah, he's got the dedication where he's just not going to give up. And that's what a lot of it is. Like, if you're just like, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get this down. And by the end of that fight, you're probably doing it damn near perfect. Like, you're probably dodging almost every attack. You probably got it figured out. But I think a lot of the people I haven't seen everybody, but I've seen a lot of people complaining about the difficulty who are just trying to do the same like jump R2 attack that they did through the whole base game. And then they're upset that that's not working on every boss. So yeah, no, this DLC is designed to get you to do something different. Okay. Dude, also, by the way, I don't know why this is being recommended now, but my Witcher 3 video from 7 years ago popped up on my feed. 2.3 million views. Thank you, guys. I went back to look at it the other, like a few months ago, and I was just like, oh. I don't know. A lot of those videos, you look back and it's like, oh, I would have done that differently. I would have changed that, but. Oh wait, yeah, all these videos are popping up. Death Stranding. Where's there's a part in here where I show Nikki responding to some of the dialogue, unraveling itself, its repetitive 30-second rule, breaking the fourth wall, the end game, the finale. It's probably in here somewhere. Because there's a whole bit of dialogue that's just like so freaking annoying. It just goes on and on and on and on forever and ever and ever. And like, I kind of like Death Stranding. I play it to relax even now, still sometimes. But even I can acknowledge that, like, damn, dude, it gets real old. Like, he needed an editor so bad for this. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know where the clip is. I thought it was so funny putting these in. The line delivery is so bad.
I can't believe you're alive.
That's my line, silly.
I thought you were dead.
My mom told me you were.
Like, I don't know if she's... Like, I don't know. The line delivery is just terrible. I'm like, you decided to cast her. You didn't have to cast her. Like, what are we doing? Oh, man. I think that's just your feed. Oh, yeah, no, it is. I just don't know why those videos are being recommended to Luke Stevens Live, the YouTube feed, after all this time, you know? It's just like kind of random out of nowhere. Okay, what was the other one? Dylan, thank you for the 10. I think it's honestly embarrassing for people to complain about the difficulty when people were making fun of gaming journalists like IGN for saying the same thing. Yeah, there is a little bit of cognitive dissonance there where it's like, okay, so you're making fun of this outlet for saying the game was too hard. Like, ha, pansies. They don't know what they're doing. They suck at games. And then they get their hands on it and they're like, okay, actually, this is like straight up very, very difficult. Too hard. Mass downvote. You know, but with these mass downvotes, the problem is like, there's a couple layers to all of it where very rarely is somebody downvoting, mass downvoting for just one reason. Usually there's things that are stacking up and the crowds are doing it for different reasons. And in the case of Elden Ring right now, it seems like a huge chunk of people are mass downvoting because of the performance, which is very valid. It runs like garbage on a lot of PCs. But then there's other people complaining about the difficulty. You don't know what percentage is what. That's why, like, already I'm just sick and tired of the mass downvoting stuff because it's not really useful. It doesn't tell you much of anything. And like, what's From Software supposed to do? Like, okay, performance, fix performance, but then there's still gonna be people mass downvoting it because they just need to get good. Like, it just sucks. Heard there's performance issues on console too. On PS5, the game doesn't stutter any more than the base game did. Like, you might go into a big field and have like 5 frames drop and then it's back to being stable. But nothing out of the ordinary, and it's very, very playable. No problems. On PC, not playable at all. Okay. Should we see this? Okay, should we talk about paid mods now? Because we still have not talked about that technically yet. Also, Cooper, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Thank you. Norcat, I almost bought that for a second, then I saw it was you, and I was like, oh, that's bait. That's bait. Okay. Okay. I think to do this, we have to actually boot up the game, don't we? Let's see if it bricks my PC again. Let's see. I've not tried Victoria 3. I've heard of it. But yeah, I would probably enjoy it since I love strategy games. You're right. seems like the DLC is separating true fans from the cheesers. Well, it's just whenever there's any huge update kind of like that to a game through a patch, like you're gonna get the it really will show you the different little subsets of the community, and we're seeing that now. I mean, that's precisely what it is.
Mr. StillYoKill_54 is now a member. I beat the base game on Elden Ring and beat Messner in the DLC. 100% used summons, screw that lol.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you are going to have using summons a hell of a lot more fun than the people who are like forcing themselves to go in with, like, there was even the other thing where people were like, those arc, whatever they're called, the arc runes. Do I have the little book they gave me? I think it's still upstairs. But you know, the little runes that do the upgrades for you to scale you higher in the DLC that doesn't carry over to the base game. I saw people saying that using those was easy mode. And it's like, guys, if you don't use those, you're going to be dealing like 300 damage to a boss that's been balanced around you dealing 1800 per hit. Like, you're screwed. You're screwed. But like, whenever anybody puts an artificial handicap on themselves, I don't feel that that bad. Again, it's like, you did it to yourself. Okay. So we have to get the music going. We have the actual thing here. Okay. New segment. So in case you've not seen it, there was an update to probably the greatest game of last year. Like, step aside Baldur's Gate. Tell you what, Todd, our Lord and Savior, he, in his infinite wisdom, praise be to Todd, he decided to make the first major update for Starfield, a big revamp of the content offering. Now that sounds great, right? Wow. More content being offered. What could possibly go wrong? Well, how they've done this is through the Creation Club. And if you don't remember the Creation Club, this was something that I believe initially started in like the 2018 era when they were trying to boost revenues to make themselves look better for a potential sale to Xbox. Same time when they were pushing for Fallout 76, all the live service stuff with the Redfall, all that was happening at the same time. And so did the Creation Club. Effectively, what it is it is paid mods under the guise of supporting the modders. Okay, so just to put it in simplest terms, how, in case you are just a console player and you've never done any modding, that's totally fine. Just to briefly explain it, most mods are done through a platform like a Nexus Mods. Nexus Mods is a fantastic site where you can go in there and actually like select individual games that you'd want to mod, and then you can add all sorts of different things. So if we click Starfield here, you can see there's all of these mods new this week, popular in the last 30 days. So there's all of these mods here, and I want you to remember some of these. Okay, so like improved follower behavior, NPC sync walk speed, so NPCs walk the same speed as you, or increases you to match the NPC's walk speed. So like you're actually synced up when you're walking from place to place. New ship module customization stuff, various crew, no more clones, increases appearance of special crew faces from 32 in the vanilla game to 500. All sorts of crazy things that can improve the game, right? Name replacement overhaul to just replace everything to look like Star Wars, you know? There's tons of stuff here. So how this normally would work is you'd find the mod that you'd want. So let's say improve follower behavior. You'd go in here, you would download it, or after you log in, if you have a mod manager like Vortex installed on your computer, that automatically installs these mods to the game. So you can just basically click a button and it's working in your game. It's way easier than it used to be. Still, there will occasionally be mods where you have to go in and manually do it, where it's like you drag this folder into this folder, copy this file into that folder, override the permissions and do this, this, and this, modify the INI file to say this instead of that. Sometimes you have to do that, but a lot of these mods now just work. It just works. You press a button and it works. So, with that said, all of these are free. As you can see, I mean, as we're sifting through, there's no price tags associated with any of these. Simple dynamic boost packs, Astrogate, like all these things. Okay, so simple dynamic boost packs, all of that. These are all free, and that's how mods have worked for ages, is that the community would work together. And if you really wanted to support one of these modders, like, I don't know if this one does, a lot of the time they will have like a tip link where you can go in and pitch them a few bucks if you really appreciate the work that they've done. If you want to help them out, you can like sign up for their Patreon or whatever. A lot of time there's stuff like that, but on the whole, the mods are free. What BGS realized is that there's a whole community of people on like Xbox, for example, that would love mods, but don't have the means of getting the mods. So they decided, oh, well, we could do console mods where we could bring some of these onto a platform where you could install them onto a console version of the game, which is awesome. I love that. Like that's awesome. I love it. But then they were like, well, there's some overhead involved with that. We've got to be prepared to handle all that overhead, and that could be expensive. So maybe we find a way to like monetize it a little bit. And this is again in the age of like Fallout 76 and Redfall, when they were trying to boost revenues to look more valuable for when they were acquired in the future. So they needed to do that. And one of the ways they could do that was through paid mods. One of the other things they've done is they've tried to get away from the accusations of this being greedy and instead pivot to, no, we're not greedy. We are supporting. We're supporting our modders. So one of the ways that they claimed they did this, I don't think this has the actual footage. I saw it in Maddie's video. Bethesda Game Studios modders. No, Bethesda modding community. Maybe I can find it. Nope. Okay, I can't find it. Anyway, they've done previous tours and stuff where they'll invite these modders out to Bethesda Game Studios' offices. They'll walk them through the building, be like, wow, look at all this amazing stuff. And then they'll do little interviews. They get to meet Todd and all of that. So they kind of rub shoulders, rub elbows, and get real friendly. And they'll post videos of this and be like, see, by you engaging with the Creation Club, you are supporting these people. That's great. But let's not get it twisted. What the Creation Club is a platform for microtransactions. And they give a cut to modders who create a lot of it. But there are also things that are in here that are straight up made by Bethesda Game Studios and sold as microtransactions. This right here, Trackers Alliance, The Vulture. This is a Bethesda Game Studios creation or mod that is paid. So this one I think was 700 credits. When you log into the game for the first time, they give you 1,000 for free, which is the only reason I have this one, because for the critique, I wanted to test it and see what is actually involved here. And basically this, adds a new contract to the Trackers Alliance board when you are in Akira, Shakira, whatever the city's called. So a lot of people saw this and were naturally very upset. They're like, it's one thing if modders are putting something together and then getting some kickback for it. Already, it's a little crazy how expensive some of these are. Some of these are free, you know, water retextures, further, faster, smarter boosts. So this is one of the free ones we saw in Nexus Mods. Color filter removal. I installed this one and I think the game looks way better. That weird color filter that was on everything, you can just take it away. And so now it's not all grayish blue everywhere you go. I think it looks way, way better. So there's things like that that are still free and that you can install and it's fine. Improve follower behavior. That's it. Yup. What I find hilarious, the top mod is the unofficial Starfield patch. They have a platform where you can get mods installed for their game. And the top mod is a collection of bug fixes. Because Bethesda hasn't gotten around to doing it, but they got around to making the platform to distribute the patch somebody else made for their game. Like, you can't make this up. Literally, most popular this month, most popular is the Starfield patch. I know it's duct tape, but it kind of looks like toilet paper. So I find that I choose to believe that it's toilet paper. But that being said, like, there's so many weird things with this. Zero cost space crew. I just like this because you can have who you want on your ship without having to do arbitrary like upgrades and stuff that take forever. But even this, like 1,000 credits. This is a Bethesda Game Studios mod. Become the captain of your own ancient mariner with 22 new decor items, all craftable through decorate mod in outposts, ships, and housing. Visit any ship service technician to apply the new module. And you go in here and like this is it. It is like a single hab that has this stuff in it. And that is 1,000 credits. Which, to be clear, is like, what, $10? About $10 for that. And again, this is official. But they claim this is a platform for mods for you to support the moderator or the mod creators out there. Little Joe Schmoes, regular people like you and me that are putting mods together and they want to do this for a living. And you listen to like that interview with Todd Howard that he did with Maddie. And he's talking about it as, well, no, we want to really empower those creators to continue making amazing things. And we want to make sure that they can do this for a living if they want to. It's like, okay. But then why is this here then? Because let's be honest, this is just a platform for paid microtransactions where they can sell you little things like this to get more revenue out of the game that you've already bought or got through Game Pass, whatever. And then they have other stuff in here that is made by other people. That's made by smaller mods and or mod creators. But even a lot of these are free. Infinite carry weight. You just download it. And then it sets the carry weight to 1 million, so you don't have to worry about carrying equipment. You want more beards? Just hit download, and it's added. Whereas Bethesda probably charged $10 for it. So a lot of people, like, they're actually putting stuff up here, are just doing it for free because they want to make the game better. But this is why, like, again, you can't just take everything at face value when somebody tells you, oh no, we're doing this to support the little guy. It's like, okay, well, the little guy is posting all of his stuff for free on your platform. You say it's meant to support them. You are selling stuff for $10 that is not worth $1. Like, okay, dude. So naturally, people have gotten a little bit upset about that. And there's been some discussions about it. Let's see. Where's the clip? Here we go. So, oh, I should also pull this up just so you can see. So as a result of these paid mods, you can see recent reviews have plunged to mostly negative, and a lot of it is just specifically about paid mods. It's like Fallout or Skyrim, except exploring isn't fun. Yeah, despite the overall negative review, I do actually kind of like this game with a big fat asterisk and all sorts of that. Yeah, things with paid mods, all sorts of stuff. A big booty. All the things you would expect from a good, healthy review section on a Steam game. So people have gotten very upset about it. And when Todd went on Mr. Maddie's channel to do an interview, I'm starting to think, like, I think it was definitely in the works before this, but I think one of the new objectives for that interview was to try and calm people down about the paid mods. So they probably started talking about doing the interview like late last year, early this year. And it just took this long to actually happen because you have to schedule it out so far. And I think in the process of that, they decided to talk about paid mods and how they could calm people down. But all Todd really said about it was, we're going to take a look at that. That's really all he said. So on Steam, Starfield's recent user reviews are now mostly negative after disgruntled players hit out at Bethesda for charging $7 for a single Starfield mission. The second mission of the recently released Trackers Alliance is only available as a Starfield creation and costs $7 or 700 credits. That's the one that I showed you just a minute ago. Creations are built via Starfield's creation kit and include free and paid mods. Creations include new missions, gear, skins, and weapons. Here's the official blurb. They said Trackers Alliance establishes the first several missions, enabling you to live your best bounty hunting life. The first mission, the Starjacker, will have you in contact with a mysterious tracker located in settlements through the settled systems. From there, let the hunts begin. And there are other problems with this, like, I talk about this in the critique, but like there are whole bits where they say like, oh, you can't just take a ship that you've stolen and like scrape the serial numbers and stuff off and then sell it to somebody else for a major profit. And the reason that they say that is because it would destabilize the game's economy. If you could just go steal any ship and then sell it to a scrapper and then make a ton of money, like there'd be no reason to really do quests. You'd just be swimming in money. So they'd have to find other ways to maybe put a bounty on your head or for that to get you caught up with something. And how they did it was like the worst way to handle it in both ways, where they made it so you can actually scrape serial numbers effectively and sell a ship you've stolen, but it's for such a laughably low amount, it's not even really worth the trouble. So it's like, yeah, I'll take this off your hands basically for free. And it's just it's a bit of a joke. But in this Trackers Alliance quest, the first bounty you do, you're going after a guy that runs a chop shop where they do this very thing. It's like a whole faction that you're going after to get their guy. I think his name is Hannibal or something. And the whole thing is like, yeah, they run a chop shop where they take ships that have been stolen and then scrape them and then sell them off to the highest bidder and make a ton of money doing it. It's a big enough thing that they have a whole space station chop shop, basically. And so it's like, well, you just contradicted. Like, I thought this wasn't viable. I thought you couldn't do this in this universe because it would be tracked and you'd get screwed. You can sell broken or stolen ships now. I'm pretty sure you could always do it. It was just for like basically no money, no profit. So like you would steal a ship and then you take it over and it's like, yeah, I'll take it off your hands for 1,200 credits or for 800 credits or something. And it was like, okay, well then why did I bother with all this? I could go do a little like fetch quest and make 5,000. So why am I doing that? So anyway, there's a lot of examples of this in BGS games where like they set one rule over here and then a few months go by and they totally contradict it over here because they just like, it's fine. People won't think about it that much. It's whatever. And they just leave it there. And it's really, really frustrating if you're trying to play the game as one total package, you know? Let's see. So the second Trackers Alliance mission, the Vulture, is available within the new creations menu, and what bounty hunter is without their trusted methods to get the job done? It's just another mission that they're charging $7 for. Now they can pivot. They can be like, well, this is because They give you 1,000, so it's basically a free mission. That's not how that works. Okay, that's not how that works at all. It's still 700 credits. Like, whether you choose to use the free ones or you try to buy it, that's just, we're getting silly. So they continue on with this. In an interview with the YouTube channel Mr. Matty Plays, Todd Howard responded directly to the criticisms and confirmed plans to look again at Bethesda's pricing. He said, "We hear that feedback too," Howard said. "First of all, I'll say that stuff gets priced based on things that we've done before, both in Creation Club and then Fallout 76. And we're always trying to be looking at what else is out there, really make sure we're giving value to everybody, and where we're not, hey, you know, we definitely will adjust." The one thing I want to say on the Trackers Alliance, that was really an attempt to something we did in Creation Club where we'd say, hey, you can get this special outfit and you can get this special weapon. We wanted to put them together and then thought, let's go the extra mile and wrap those around a quest. Okay. But now we definitely see the feedback, right? And that's not what we want at all in terms of, oh no, this looks like a faction that we're chopping up and then selling for 700 credits at a time. And so I do think we're going to take a look at that and how we deliver content like that. And whether we're changing pricing or breaking it up or whatever, we should do that. So great feedback from the community. I do not believe for a second. I have way too much respect for this man that I have a burning candle for. Similar to what people do for their holy figures. I respect this man too much to believe that he is that stupid. That he was not aware the community would be upset that they were charging $7 for a quest in a single player game. I don't believe for a second that came as a surprise. I think they knew. I just don't think they care. That's a different thing, you know? Because again, the whole premise with these mods is that they want to find a way to further monetize these games over the long term. These games that they make are played for a decade at a time. They are very successful in the long term. Nobody's questioning that. And Bethesda has always wanted to find a way to monetize it, to make it more profitable to have these games that are played for decades. With Starfield, or with Skyrim rather, they just sold it 15 times and would do like a slightly altered version each time, and people kept buying it. With Starfield, they're not going to do that as far as I can tell. Like, they might do a Game of the Year edition because they found one person that called it Game of the Year, and they'll re-release a special edition like that. Maybe they've already done that. I don't know. But what it seems to be is that their plan for a lot of their games is to create basically live service single player games where they support it long term with annual story updates and expansions, and then a lot of paid mods and stuff like that. And that keeps it afloat. That keeps the money flowing in. Because again, if Fallout 5 is not expected until like 2032, 2035, somewhere between there, the next Starfield game is probably not coming until the late 2030s, which is crazy. It will probably be between 10 and 15 years before we see another Starfield-esque game. So when we're talking about that amount of time, it's like, yeah, it makes sense why they would want to find some way to monetize this in the short term, as you know, stretching into the long term. So that's, I mean, let's be honest, that's all this is. You know, what I can't stand is when developers or PR treat the community like they are extremely stupid and trying to frame this around, well, no, we wanted to deliver more content to players. You could just deliver more content to players. Like, you could do that. If you wanted to send out free expansions and things, or paid expansions, and then you fill in free content here and there, I think people would be fine with that. We could respect it. If it was a big expansion that was deserving of our money, we would do that. And imagine every year they're doing like a Far Harbor sized expansion. That would be a great way to keep the game alive for years and years and years. That would be great. This is not that. This is a platform for you to sell microtransactions, which quickly approach macro transactions, with $10 rooms, which is what I mean, this is a room for $10. That's what it is. That's what this is. It's a platform for that. But even this, you see 336 likes. I would not be surprised if 336 people, probably well more, 9,000 people bookmarked it, saved it for later. So they still probably sold a handful of thousands of copies of this. And that's because these types of microtransactions and things that are built around appealing to whales, they are not designed for the average consumer that is looking at this. These are designed to get the whales to buy them.
Brendan Lucas donated £5 through Super Chat. Why shouldn't modders get paid? Would you be a YouTuber if you weren't getting paid?
No, so here's the thing. I'm fine with modders getting paid. That's why platforms like Nexus Mods have people put up like tip links, or Buy Me a Coffee, I think is one of the websites that they use a lot. Patreon is another thing. There's a guy, I don't remember his full name. It's Otis something, but he makes a mod that unlocks a free cam in Unreal Engine games. Like, you remember the intro to my Hogwarts Legacy critique video? This intro, I was only able to film this because of a mod by that guy. And so I unlocked the camera and I could do all of this. But in order to get access to those tools, you sign up for the Patreon. So I'm a patron subscriber of his, and I support him in that way. So I am all for supporting modders who do great work to enable really cool things like this that wouldn't be possible otherwise. I'm all in for that. But again, talking about like treating people like they're stupid, the Creation Club is probably the most inefficient way to get modders paid. And the featured mods are all from Bethesda, not all of them, most of them are from Bethesda Game Studios. And they've been put together and they are quest lines exclusive to the Creation Club that you can't get anywhere else. It's stuff that's been cut out of the base game or future expansions and put into this microtransaction platform. I'm down for paying modders. I'm down for that. There's Todd. I forgot he was in this too. I'm all in for that. But I don't want, I think there are good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. And I think the Creation Club is sort of laughable in its approach, because they're trying to convince you that it's this really pro little guy way of doing it. And it's just frankly not. It's a platform that's been designed to boost Bethesda's revenues. They don't even state, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, have they said how much, what the cut is for the modders on this? What's the modders cut on Creation Club? What's the profit split? You just answer your own question. Look at what it says. Creation Club creators are paid like developers. Developers do not get paid when you buy their game. In this case, ZeniMax gets paid when you buy their games. Devs usually get paid over the development cycle and then get bonuses. Okay, so these people are saying that it's not
revenue. Talking about a modder making $5,000 on Patreon is like talking about 1% of OF.
Hold on, I'll read the whole thing. I forgot when I changed the camera, it doesn't keep reading it. Some people are saying that on Reddit that the Creation Club, like, they buy the rights to the mod and then they put it up and sell it. I don't know if that's true. Like for this, whatever it was, where is it? Nope, back this one. For this one made by Modder Tank Girl 444, it's being sold for $6. And so the Reddit post was suggesting, somebody was saying that like they buy the rights to this and then they sell it for $6. I'm not sure if that's true. I think it would make more sense if they're paid per sale, like they get a cut of it, but I don't know. What was, hold on, Brennan, thank you. How do you think Nexus donations compare to your YouTube revenue? Talking about a modder making 5K on Patreon, it's like talking about 1% of OnlyFans. I'm not sure what you mean. Talking about 1% of OnlyFans? I'm trying to figure out what you mean, Brendan. I'm having trouble connecting the point. If you're like, I'm guessing what you're getting at from your previous one. I appreciate the super chats, by the way. Don't get it twisted. What I think you are saying is that you are down for this because it is a way to financially support the modders more consistently. If they put out a good mod like Beowulf healthy parts, each part of the new Beowulf gun will buff the player plus 20 health, items added to Jane on Mars in Sidonia. If you look at this and you're like, hey, I want to support this modder, I'll buy it for $1. That I'm much more willing to do. I'd still like to know what the split is. I think that should be transparent. If it's like, hey, the modder gets 80% or 90% or 70%, tell me that. Like, I think that the community deserves to know how much money is going to the modder, but as far as I can tell, it's not clear. But that being said, I'm fine with supporting modders who do good work. If you want to throw a modder $1 for one of their mods that you enjoy, cool, love it, support them. Throw $2, why not? My point is, like these, featured Bethesda Game Studios. It's just a microtransaction. Featured, this is made by some actual person. It's UC Flygirl Companion, so it's like a separate companion. Oh my god. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. Buzz your girlfriend. Woof. Golly. Constellation. So the second or third one, a BGS plushie collection, which you can buy for $3. Crimson Fleet, real Eleonora. So you can create an actual Crimson Fleet bunk, which honestly, this looks way better than that other Ancient Mariner module. Like, this is super boring. This looks like something you just throw together in Fallout 4 in 5 minutes. But this is actually very well done. Very grungy. Very cyberpunky, too. It's very well done. Look at that. Yeah, see this one? If you want to support that for $5, I mean, still $5 is like butt ton of cash just to be dropping for a room or a series of rooms, but still. Starborn, again, it's a BGS skin. This one's free though, so there's that. So, like, again, if you want to pay mods to support modders, cool, but let's not get this twisted. At least, to be the most generous, at least half of the platform is a microtransaction platform for Bethesda to sell you more stuff. To pretend like it's actually this grand gesture to support the little guy is just, I think, naive. From what I can tell. The mining sim is the only mod worth cash. Hold on, I remember seeing that one. Mining sim. I'm looking. Did I just go past it? Is it also featured? Derek, Ancient Star Sim? This one? Okay. This one is $5. Life in the Starfield can be difficult, but you know what isn't? Joining the Argos Extractors family. Mining Conglomerate is the first module for Star Sim, providing a taste of our continued work on complementing Starfield with an immersive space simulation. The simulation system handles anything covered by this creation, including asteroids, ships, and stations. We have also included a new docking interface system on stations that allows the player to interact with a brand new terminal interface rather than requiring boarding. Almost all functions are handled within this interface to save time, including communication with NPCs, mission boards with unique jobs, and various other features related to the creation. When starting a new game, an exciting new quest is provided by Argos extractors due to your current employment with them. When being directed to return to the lodge, you will also have a quest pointing to the Argos space HQ in Jemison orbit. This will introduce the new features through the station interface at that location and direct the player to start retrieving Argos tasks from the mission board offered at the HQ. After proving your mettle on the missions board, Argos will extend an offer to be promoted to management within the recently founded Argos mining station. You are then directed to the station and introduced to a new role. Basically, it says space mining is reimagined. There are new mission board types, including mining asteroids, protecting mining operations, protect mining HQ, and protecting mining station. 2 new stations have been built and added. Stations have a bulletin board with various announcements and messages. Players can now receive mail, which is currently only accessible within the station interface. Stations can be managed in a straightforward minigame to ensure that local productivity meets the requirements of the faction that owns the station. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, that's kind of fun. If you wanted to get deeper in the role play of playing as a miner, you could do that. Like that's kind of cool. I haven't tried it, so I don't know how good it is, but I mean, it seems like they've done a good amount of thinking about it. It's like this kind of thing. Yeah. When I heard Creation Club initially announced back in 2018, I thought that this was the level of stuff we could expect to get and that would be supported here. This I'm all in for. Yeah. You want to throw $5 to Varanus? Hopefully Varanus is getting the lion's share of that, and it's not like 50-50, but hopefully it's actually making, $3-4 on that $5 microtransaction. But that I'm all in for. It's when BGS kind of slips in microtransactions for content that they took out of the base game that I'm like, okay, what are we doing? I heard it was 25% that they take. Hold on. Does somebody have a source for that? Where did you guys see 25%? Oh, wait. This person's saying 20%. Let's see. Okay. Where's the one? Okay, yes, but lots of places do this. So this was in response to this. Bethesda will be profiting off of other people's work. This is from 2017, for the record. Nobody really thinks a company would do this for free, do they? They'll be profiting from it. So apparently Creation Club was like 2017. It was even earlier than I thought it was. This is something we should obviously disagree with because games companies should be making their own stuff to make money from, not just distributing the work to talented modders and paying them much less than they would actual developers. This person says, yes, but many places do this. Any distributor ever really. Steam does it. They get a cut of every sale. Redbubble gets the majority of the sale from artists. Artists get around 20%. Okay, that's for Redbubble. I thought when Google pulled it up and did the summary, they were saying it was for this. But okay, so Redbubble, they get around 20% of the money. GOG Game, Jolt, eBay, Amazon, and more. In BGS's case, let's see, they work together to make content. Modders supply the idea and their part in development. Bethesda provides the professional finish, and they're just selling professional. Okay. I just want to know what the cut is. It seems weird they wouldn't just say what the cut is, right? Like, is that not a little odd that they don't just disclose? Did anybody find the 25% thing? Let's see. 1 point rise in the ire of modders and players as new payment structure BGS announced, or Bethesda Softworks announced. Under the Creation Club, modders were hired as contract developers by Bethesda and paid directly for the content they made. Creations will instead work on a royalty system, giving modders a cut of sales for their mods. Bethesda did not immediately respond to their request for comment. New payment under Creation. Okay, so it previously was that they were paid directly. Now it's a royalty system. And I think the royalty system is better, because if it does better, if the mod does better, they make more money. That just makes sense to me. But again, like, it doesn't seem like anybody knows what the split is. It's odd to me it's impossible to find what the split is. That's just weird. That's just weird. I would hope it's really high, because again, all Bethesda's really doing is providing a platform for this stuff. A lot of these mods are available on Nexus for free. So like, these mods improve follower behavior, Avantech, community patch, all of these are available for free on Nexus. So it seems that they've just copied these mods over, still for free, onto the Creation Club platform, which is nice to distribute it, but better dynamic weather. Dude, this mod is 384 bytes. That's wild. However, fans and modders alike reacted negatively to the announcement, with many complaints leveraged against content creators only receiving 25% of the fallout, or 25% of the total profits. Oh, is that copied from an article? Did it? I probably flagged the article. Okay. Yeah, so previously for Fallout's Creation Club, it seems like it was 25%. And now it is... Now it's probably about the same. So that feels worse. You know, you buy a $5 mod, the modder might be getting a little over $1. And Bethesda is just pocketing $3.75 or whatever. That feels rough, man. That doesn't feel good. Huh. So anyway, with all this, I guess to just wrap up my overall thoughts, to summarize it, I absolutely understand why people are frustrated by it. The Creation Club was initially pitched as this way for players to support the modding community more directly and financially, and then we come to find out that it was actually, that was just the cover for Bethesda selling a bunch of microtransactions to you directly, and to also get a cut on the sale of mods that they didn't create, but they still get, if some of these reports are to be believed, if they're taking 75% and only 25% goes to the modder, like they're printing money without having to do anything. Like if somebody goes in and buys a $5 mod that Bethesda didn't really do anything for, cool, awesome. They just made a ton of money and they didn't have to do anything for it. Like, that's the ultimate dream for BGS. So when Todd says, we're going to reevaluate, we're going to look at it again. Yeah, he might look at it and then just hop back on his phone. You know, like, I don't believe for a second that they're going to make any substantial change, because again, these systems are not for Joe Schmo. They're not made for the average gamer. They're made for the whales. You might not ever pay any money for microtransactions for games like this, but there are a lot of people out there, still only like, you know, half of a percentage point of total players, but there's a lot of people that will spend hundreds of dollars on microtransactions in these types of games. Like, they will buy all of the little swag. They'll buy all of the optional skins. They just can't help themselves. And they justify it as like, well, I'm supporting a game I really like. Cool. That's awesome. But I I mean, it I think it's easy for us to be like, yeah, nobody's buying this. It's like, no, there's 9,000 people that bookmarked that one. And there's a lot of people that probably bought it and didn't even bookmark it. So there's still probably, you know, they might have sold 10, 20,000 copies of that little DLC that was like a room. You know, it's just, it's wild. Sounds like someone you know personally. Oh, like somebody spending money on microtransactions. I know people who have spent a lot of money on microtransactions in games like Warframe or games like Apex, Call of Duty. I think we all do. And then of course we've talked about some other like content creators who have spent thousands on microtransactions in games before. People who did everything correct and did nothing wrong, you know. There's some people that it'll blow your mind how much money they spend on this stuff. It's outrageous. What's going on with your hair? It didn't dry before I put my headphones on, so now I have like a little tiara. I'm like a beautiful little princess. You're welcome. Let's see. Joe Raptor buys every skin, it seems like. I don't know if he's buying them or if like they get sent to him or enabled. Because like, was it AC? I think it was Valhalla. The code that they sent me for review had like a bunch of the DLC and stuff and like cosmetics enabled on it. So it looked like I bought all this stuff and I was like, I didn't. It just like, I understand they want you to like see it and they want to show it to you. And so they include it. But it's also like, it's just a lot of stuff that you didn't need that's included. Like, can I give this back? Nope. Okay. Crap. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The shark cards in GTA Online really push the microcurrency to continue in the gaming industry. Yeah, that and V-Bucks. V-Bucks is the other ridiculous one. V-Bucks is just outrageous. My little brother, he will like ask for Christmas, not for presents or like anything specific. He wants V-Bucks. V-Bucks. Just let that settle in. Yeah, poor thing. Oh, well, guys, we're lost. Society's over. We blew it. Okay. Oh, yeah, I saw that Neil deGrasse Tyson did a follow-up to Terrence Howard. Because if you guys missed it, that Terrence Howard video we did ended up popping off. It did surprisingly well. But, dude, there are some wacky people that showed up in defense of Terrence Howard. They're like, well, actually, Luke, 1 × 1 = 2, as he says. You are just part of the scientific establishment that's doubting him and all. And it was like, bro, it blew my mind how many people there are hundreds and hundreds of comments from people that are like trying to defend him. It's wild. Yeah. Did Neil deflower the flower of life? I don't think so.
A little backstory there. I took initial interest in Terrence because my mother said to me, do you know Terrence Howard? I said, yeah, I know. You mean the actor? She said, yeah. Well, I heard him interviewed on NPR. On there, he said that like when he was a kid, he wanted to be like a scientist and study the universe. I said, well, that's cool. Okay, maybe we'll get him on Star Talk. We love talking to celebrities who have a sort of soft geek underbelly. At the time, I didn't quite know how to get in touch with him, but we met at something called the Upfronts, which is where networks present their next season's TV shows.
I saw him at an event up front.
And then this came in my inbox. In this particular case, since I basically solicited it from him, I actually spent time reading every line of all 36 pages. And I commented. My comments are in red here. You see that?
So he actually went through and like responded to it. So the way Terrence Howard framed it is that, yeah, I went to Neil and I told him about my brilliant ideas. Because again, Terrence Howard, who thinks 1 × 1 = 2 for reasons, because he's deflowered the flower of life. he said that Neil like dismissed him and kind of implied that Neil was part of this like establishment that couldn't entertain new crazy ideas or anything. And then like here you can see that no, he entertained it, which is a professional courtesy for somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson to listen to anything you say should be a compliment. But for him to spend this time to actually read through it and type things out, and like that's pretty crazy. It's also funny that Terrence copyrighted his little paper. That's also kind of funny. So that's a little funny. Mr. Boogie, thank you. Mr. Boogle for the 5 months. Thank you for the 1 × 1 = 2.
So I spent a lot of time on it. And I thought, out of respect for him, what I should do is give him my most informed critical analysis that I can. In my field, we call that a peer review. You come up with an idea, you present it either at a conference or you first write it up, and you send it to your colleagues. It is their duty to alert you of things about your ideas that are either misguided or wrong, or there's the calculation that doesn't work out, or the logic doesn't comport. That's their job. Not all ideas will turn out to be correct. Most won't be. But to get to that point, you need to know things like, what has everyone else said about this same subject? Am I repeating someone else's work? Is this a new insight that no one else has had, but has foundations that are authentic or legitimate or objectively true? Am I making a false assumption? Am I making an assumption that someone else has already shown to be false? All of this goes on the frontier of science. Let me make it clear that I'm delighted when I see people with active minds trying to tackle the great unknowns in the universe.
This is the main takeaway I got from this video, is that he is so charitable with this and so nice about it. Whereas that video we watched last time of Professor Dave, where he's like, no, dumbass, 1 × 1 does not = 2, because that's insane. You learned this in elementary school, which you clearly flunked out of. Like, he is ruthless. Whereas Neil is like, I appreciate that you have this active mind and you're trying to find some clever new thing, but we're going to work through this together. You know, he's the patient teacher, whereas Professor Dave is the teacher that's like fed up with your BS. Oh, play.
It's a beautiful thing that people want to participate on this frontier. What can happen is, if you're a fan of a subject, let's say, a hobbyist, let's call it, it's possible to know enough about that subject to think you're right, but not enough about that subject to know that you're wrong. And so there's this sort of valley in there, a valley of false confidence. This has been studied by others, and it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the phenomenon.
The Dunning-Kruger effect, I've talked about this before as well. You see it all over life and existence. It's like once you've spotted it, you can't unsee it. But basically what you can think of it as is like the graph is kind of like if the y-axis is confidence. Okay, we'll just do and then this is experience, exp. Okay, how it generally works with the Dunning-Kruger effect is that people start like this, it shoots up, and then it dips, and ends up like that. And what that means is that if you have no exposure, no experience at all in a given field, you probably have no confidence in the subject. If I asked you just randomly, like, hey, could you explain to me mortgage-backed securities in financial markets and how they led to the 2008 recession? If you had no experience with anything regarding finance, you'd have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, you would be like, I don't know. You'd have zero confidence in the topic. You'd be like, I don't know. But if you watch The Big Short, you watched a movie, you might think you have a little bit of know-how. You got a little bit of exposure. So you might be up here like, I can explain that. I've seen The Big Short. I can explain what happened. But as time goes by and you study it more, you buy a few books on it, you take a few classes, and then you have a professor who really understands it explaining it to you. You'll start to realize, oh God, I really don't understand this. I'm actually down here. Despite having studied way more than when I was so confident up here, I know what I don't know. And so my experience is increased, but my confidence in my knowledge has decreased because I know what I don't know. And it's the same thing with like flat earthers, where like flat earthers are right at the precipice of Mount Stupid. So like they are fully committed that they know everything there is to know and that you are shill and the earth is in fact flat, when in reality they're just incompetent. They don't know what they're talking about, but they really believe that they're here. Whereas if they took a few classes on like physics or on anything, they would slide down this valley and realize, oh, I don't actually know what I'm talking about. I'm actually not a super genius. And you hear this all the time where people like Terrence Howard, he says that he has figured out that Einstein was wrong. And he's done what no other mathematician or physicist was ever able to do. He's solved it. And, ooh, I got a big package. Giggity. Somebody's going to clip that now. So he really does believe that he is more experienced, has more know-how than Albert Einstein, who's over here. And Terrence, who is an actor that was in an okay TV show, and one of the Iron Man movies, I don't think he even made it to the second one, did he? I don't think he even made it to the second one. Because he wanted to be paid more than Robert Downey Jr., probably because he did some of his Terrence math. But with this, it's just the more, like, as you gain experience, you start to understand what you don't know. And that makes you more humble. And then as you learn and you actually grow, you end up back at the top of Mount Wisdom and knowledge. But a lot of people start over here. And you even see, I saw it in like college and I was guilty of it too. You take one finance course and you're like, yeah, I know what's going on. I got it figured out, when you really, really don't. And you take more classes and you realize, oh, there's so much I don't know. So at the end of a 4-year degree, you come out of it and you're like, yeah, I really don't know much about finance. I took, a bunch of classes. I have a degree in it, but yeah, there's a lot I don't understand. Master's courses, you might end up like over here, and then PhD, you might end up over here. And then years of experience beyond that, you might finally become an expert, like a true expert. But the Dunning-Kruger effect is very, very real. And somebody like Terrence Howard is a prime example of that very phenomenon.
Phenomenon where a little bit of knowledge, you over-assess how much of that subject you actually know. And then when you learn even more, you realize, no, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So then there's a sort of a lull there. And then when you learn even more, you come back up. Ultimately, learning enough to know whether you were right or wrong. To become an back up.
Yeah. Wisdom, knowledge, and experience. Confidence. Peak of Mount Stupid, Valley of Despair, Slope of Enlightenment, Plateau of Sustainability.
Ultimately, learning enough to know whether you were right or wrong. To become an expert means you spend all this time. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just sit in an armchair and say, I'm now an expert. It requires years and years of study, especially looking through journals where new ideas are published and contested. That's what we have learned is the most effective means of establishing that which is objectively true, or determining that which is objectively false. Both of those work hand in hand to move the needle on our understanding of the universe. I'm going to read you just my opening line here. It's titled 1 × 1 = 2. So I lead
the disappointment in his face. 1 × 1 = 2.
Off by saying, this is an ambitious work that is a clear indication of a restless, active mind. Within these pages, however, there are many assumptions and statements that are underinformed, misinformed or simply false, thereby compromising or nullifying many of the subsequent conclusions you have drawn. That's exactly what should happen in a peer review out of respect for one another's intellect. It opens with a quote from Terence. It can never occur that...
So he quoted himself in his own, like, article that he wrote trying to prove himself right. This like screams Michael Scott, you know, you miss every shot that you don't take, by, I forget the name of the guy, you know, quoted by blah, 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 quoted by Michael Scott. It's the exact same vibe. He says it can never occur that a square root of a given number when added to itself is greater than the initial number squared. For that would expose a loose thread within the fabric of our understanding, a loose thread capable of unraveling the very ground rules of mathematics. The problem is that's just wrong. Like that's that's not true at all.
Square root of a given...
Oh yeah, you miss every shot you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. It's the same vibe.
Given number, when added to itself, is greater than the initial number squared. For that would expose a loose thread within the fabric of our understanding, a loose thread capable of unraveling the very ground rules of mathematics.
Dude, he's about to go so savage. Just wait. Because, like, that statement is flatly false. And it takes 3 seconds of thought to realize that it's false. Like, I am not good at math. And when I heard that, I was like, that is not true. What?
Statement. So then I just say, this opening thesis is false. There are plenty of examples of this that have escaped your attention. His statement is shown to be false for every number that's less than 1 and greater than 0. For example,
literally an infinite set of examples demonstrate that he is wrong. Because it's every number, every decimal, everything under 1 proves that it's false. There is an infinite number, an infinite set of examples for why he's wrong. That's how wrong he is. Okay. The square root of 0.64, I'll let him read it.
The square root of 0.64 is 0.8. 0.8 is bigger than 0.64, and it's a larger number than the original. And 0.64 squared equals 0.4096, a smaller number than the original. To the extent that the next 35 pages depends on your stated thesis, this fact undermines your claims and assumptions and conclusions. It's not about feelings here. It's about objective reality. So at the time, I considered Terence a strong acquaintance.
But like, this is the thing is he countered that. And what did Terrence Howard do? Ignored it and said that like he's part of the establishment and he was just trying to like put him down. Says that he's like not willing to actually entertain his thoughts and stuff. It's like, no, you are flatly wrong. You are flatly wrong. Like, if your whole argument is based on one premise that is demonstrably false, okay, your whole thing is like, what? It's just a waste of time now. Like, it doesn't work that way.
We hung out a bit and had much exchange. We haven't spoken much since then, but go to page 2, and in here, he mentions people who he declares were persecuted because their vision exceeded the myopic view of their contemporaries. And he mentions Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, John Keeley, and many, many more. Regarding your list of people who have made brave sacrifices, I note that to be a genius is to be misunderstood, but to be misunderstood is not to be a genius. The work of Russell...
It's an important point. Just because everybody thinks that you're an idiot does not mean that you're actually a genius. Just because sometimes they thought that, you know, in centuries past, that geniuses might have been idiots because they thought outside the box. It's a dangerous assumption to make, to just be like, well, everybody says that I'm a dumbass, which must mean that I'm a genius.
Walter Russell, has eluded any experimental support, and the work of Keeley is generally not reproducible. Science is about reproducibility. I can have the most brilliant, crazy, fun idea ever, And if I perform an experiment and no one else can duplicate that experiment, it belongs in the trash heap. It's me in my own world, thinking I have landed on an objective truth, when in fact I haven't. That's how science works, the reproducibility of results. As for the work of Tesla, much of it had very real value to physics and our understanding of electromagnetism. And that value is duly recognized by my community in the naming of a unit of electromagnetism after him. You can't get more badass than having a unit named after you. Newton has a unit named after him. For example, the metric unit of force is a Newton. Much of the rest of his work was fringe and unrealized, either for violating known laws of physics or for being simply impractical. Just because you do some good stuff doesn't mean everything you ever did is going to be great.
There's also a lot of nutter butter people that think that Tesla was just like basically like a comic book supervillain, hero, anti-villain, whatever. So like one of the things Tesla thought was that you could probably harness energy in the ionosphere and basically have infinite energy available to you. But there was no clear way of ever capturing it. And it was just kind of like an idea. And now it's like, well, it's not practical. There's no way to capture that. Yes, there's a lot of energy, but it's like saying, you know, Tesla realized that the sun has effectively infinite energy and we just have to capture that. And then all oil, every unit, you know, nuclear energy, all of that will be useless because we'll have harvested the power of the sun. And it's like, yeah, but like, how do we get there? Like, there's a pretty big leap between the idea and the execution. And Tesla had some cool ideas, but a lot of the time the execution wasn't kind of drawn out. There wasn't anything to demonstrate that his ideas on how to capture it or realize the ideas, none of those were fully realized or fleshed out. But a lot of people that like, you know, conspiratorial thinking are like, no, he did figure it out. It's just the establishment kept him down. The establishment stole his work and his papers that proved all of this real. That's why. It's like, or maybe he just had some really good ideas over here and then some bad ideas over here. It's like the guy that, what is it called? PCR test, I think is what it's called. Yeah. So like this, the PCR test. PCR means polymerase chain reactions. It's a test to detect genetic material from a specific organism, such as a virus. So PCR is also used to detect like, it can be used to detect like parenthood and lineage. Like, you know, the "Are you the father?" tests. A lot of them, my understanding, use the same, you know, PCR testing technologies that were developed. But the guy that invented the PCR test is like total nutter butter. So he invented this amazing test that's been used in all sorts of fields, whether it's virus detection or genealogical stuff, well above my pay grade. But he's also like a total nutter butter conspiracy theorist, where he thinks like, I think he was one of the head honchos behind like the COVID is actually a conspiracy theory and doesn't actually exist, and AIDS is fake and all sorts of stuff. So just because somebody has a really good idea here doesn't mean that everything else they believe is true.
I will further affirm that just because an idea sounds crazy doesn't make it wrong. The system of research and publications in peer-reviewed journals has the capacity to spot crazy but true ideas, provided they're supporting by compelling arguments, and ultimately supported by experiments and observations. Newton's laws, Einstein's relativity, quantum physics were all revolutionary ideas that appeared in peer-review settings or journals. Meanwhile, most of the work of Russell and Keeley had no such success with their ideas. So I think on Rogan, Terrence said that I trashed those three researchers.
Attack that I had talked about Walter Russell and Victor Schauberger and John Keeley and Tesla as the people that I looked up to. So he threw shit on he was like, well, Tesla stuff worked, but Tesla was never really respected and out there.
When I'm just simply stating the fact, I don't think of that as trashing. I think of that as being honest. I mean, I could have softened it, but I don't think that's what people who care about you should do. People who care will be honest with you about ideas, about thoughts. The world is changing so quickly, and so is everything around us. Unfortunately, we have chosen to remain handcuffed to antiquated and obsolete beliefs. We have put an enormous amount of faith into the methods and practices of old that are as dead today as the men who propagated the notion that the world was flat. So I say here, regarding your world was flat reference, it's not widely appreciated that the idea of a flat earth predates the introduction and development of the methods and tools of science as we practice them today. Those processes date back to around 1600, coincident with the invention of the microscope and telescope. Before then, truths were whatever seemed right to the senses. Afterwards, and to this day, truth was whatever the verified data obtained by your instruments forced you to believe if your senses otherwise contradicted the data. This fact means that there's no such misunderstanding on the scale of the flat earth in the era of modern science. And in multiple places throughout the treatise, he's attaching a number to a physical idea or a physical object. That idea goes way back, by the way. Go back to Pythagoras, famous for the Pythagorean theorem, which we all learned in 8th grade, was it, or 9th grade? Pythagoras was also a philosopher who tried to understand how things worked. He felt, among others in his group, that if you assign a number to something, the number can imbue that object with certain meaning and significance, which means then if you manipulate the numbers, that you gain insight into the objects themselves once you've assigned a number to it. There's a lot of that permeates this document, but it's a long disproven approach to the world. Again, there's nothing wrong with a failed idea. Now other people know to not do it, right? That has value. If we place a candle in front of a mirror, the measurement of light is doubled, is it not? It does not measure as only one light source. We actually see two lights. A light meter will show twice the intensity of light. This is false.
He attacked it so with such vitriol.
Maybe that's too blunt. What else should I say? I'm a scientist. That's what I would tell a colleague who then say, would thank you, and then we go out for a beer after, because that's how that works. And there's an old saying, I first heard it from Michael Dell of Dell Technologies. If one day you find yourself the smartest person in the room, change rooms. I say this is false. The light in the mirror appears dimmer than the source of light itself, for several reasons, starting with the fact that no mirror is 100% reflective. But more importantly, the candle in the mirror is always farther away from you than the candle itself. So the light meter will always read less than twice the actual value of the candle itself. I will note that from this work, Terrence,
when he made a bunch of shapes out of inflatable balloons, it's like, I invented a new geometry. Oh, cool.
produces art, sculptural art, which I find to be intriguing, even beautiful. To me, more intriguing than beautiful, because you got to look at it and you keep looking at it, like, what is that? And what's going on there? I just want to read you my ending comments here. I could not follow the reasoning on these last few pages, but the illustrations that derive from them are beautiful, regardless of how they were derived. My notes have been strongly critical of your reasoning and conclusions. I was candid and blunt out of respect for the energy you have clearly invested in this work. But if you're sure that you are still right and that I have completely misunderstood your thesis, then you will need to look for another person to evaluate what you have done and solicit their comments. In any case, like I say above, the images and illustrations in your final pages are beautiful works of art, unlike any I have seen. Best to you, Neil. So, in case people wanted to know what actually went down 8 years ago, just always be cautious of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You put in a little bit of work and you have an idea, and then you think your idea is right, and that Einstein is wrong, and Newton is wrong, and that everybody's wrong, and that all of modern astrophysicists are wrong. That's bold. That's bold. Audacious. Bodacious.
Remember what I said when I was like, he's so charitable with this. Like, you're a bold thinker. And then cut to Professor Dave. You dumbass. You know, it's like, what's more likely, that Einstein, Newton, every physicist in the world today is a moron who cannot appreciate your understanding that 1 × 1 actually equals 2? Or that you, as an actor with no actual education, don't know what you're talking about? Which is more likely? Like, it betrays the extreme, I would say, unearned confidence on the part of somebody like Terrence to believe that he has that secret knowledge and everybody else is just simply a hater or a doubter or part of some conspiracy. It's the same trap that, like, again, flat earthers will fall into, where it's like, hey, I work, I don't even know what's like a really weird, like, no shade, but I work like picking up trash off the side of the highway as part of a community service thing from a DUI that this person had. And that's what I do for a living. But I watched some YouTube videos, and now I'm convinced that I know more than all the scientists that have ever worked in astrophysics or anything. And everything is part of a grand conspiracy. The Earth is actually flat. You can't actually go to space. It's actually a crystal dome over top. And I figured this out because I watched some YouTube videos. Like, you have to be so, like, your confidence versus your experience and actual education and knowledge has to be so out of whack that you end up sounding like totally delusional. And that's the same kind of thing with the Terrence Howard crowd as well. I've been very shocked at the sheer volume of people that have come out onto those videos, and like the video we did looking at the original video that he did, and it's like really depressing to see how many people are like, actually, I think he's a genius. You know, people mocked Einstein at first. I was like, I mean, not really. They didn't really mock him. They were just like, okay, we'll see if it's real. And then it turned out relativity was real, and it changed the world effectively. Like, that's just how it works, you know. My 14-year-old subscribes to the Lincoln was a tyrant theory thanks to YouTube. Oh, dude. Or the other one, my sister at one point, one of my sisters just casually threw out that she thought the sinking of the Titanic was all part of a conspiracy, and that the Titanic was actually swapped out for Olympic, and then Olympic was sunk because after the ramming with the I don't remember the ship that rammed her, but Olympic had like a permanent keel after she was rammed. So they were like, oh, they intentionally sunk her, and then they screwed up the insurance fraud and accidentally killed all those people in the sinking of the Olympic. So the ship at the bottom of the ocean is not actually Titanic, it's actually Olympic. It's like, okay, like you watched a TikTok of somebody that said that, you know, one of those like brain rot TikTokers. It's like, did you know that the Titanic was fake? And they talk in that really weird monotone way, you know? Drives me crazy. And they're also yelling for some reason. Did you know that the Titanic was actually the Olympic and it sunk at the bottom of the sea as part of an insurance scam? It's like, bro, dry up. Drives me crazy. Part of me is kind of, I make a little bit of money. Well, technically, I don't make a profit on TikTok because I pay my editor to do it and it doesn't cover the expense. It's a long story, but I get distribution and exposure through TikTok. Okay, so I'm saying this as somebody that actually benefits from TikTok existing. But when I heard that like there was a concerted effort to try and get TikTok banned in the States, I was like, honestly, might make the world a little bit of a better place, frankly. Maybe it'll resolve a lot of the brain rot. Maybe. Probably not. Probably just moves to Instagram Reels. But dear God Almighty, it drives me crazy because somebody will watch a TikTok and then they'll just casually tell you, yeah, I think that the Titanic, that's all fake. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's another civilization that built the pyramids because I don't think that they could have done that. Because I watched a TikTok where a guy said that he didn't think they could do it. Like, people have stopped thinking. Like, just because you heard somebody say something doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. Just because I say, hey, I don't like the Creation Club stuff for Starfield, doesn't mean that you have to agree with me. You can be like, well, I actually like it for this reason. And I get what you're saying here, but what about this? And then we can go back and forth. Just like we were just doing in that previous segment where I can go in and like, I say I don't like this. And you're like, well, but I like the ability to support modders. I'm like, I also like that. So if you're just buying Creation Club mods from non-BGS sources, that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. I still am frustrated that they take like 75% allegedly, but whatever. Yeah, Plague of Angel, genuinely disrespectful to say that these incredible achievements by ancient peoples couldn't stack rocks on their own. Yeah, it's the pyramid thing drives me crazy. The fact that people are like, no, it had to have been aliens. Like, no, of course we don't have like a documentary crew that filmed the building of the pyramids, but people who know what they're talking about are pretty confident that they could have done it. It just would take 40 years of building with thousands and thousands and thousands of people doing it. Like, the entire like city economy was built around building one of those things for 40 years. Took forever, but they would do it. Yeah, guys, I'm not saying like I would actually vote for TikTok to be banned. Like, we're bantering here, okay? I'm not like putting forward a policy that like I ban it. I'm saying, yeah, sometimes I think TikTok going away would be better. Like, yeah, we've all probably had that thought. Like, chill out, guys. People are like, oh man, L-Tag, oh geez. Oh golly, aliens sunk the Titanic. It is funny when people are like, they hear anything that's kind of like a little baffling and like, aliens. Like, you see it with like, what was that one missing persons case? There was one I remember. There was one I remember where there was like, I think it was a lady that went for a run. No, it was a family that disappeared with their car. Like, they were out driving through like a forested area and they just disappeared. Nobody ever saw them again. It was really, really weird. And one of the explanations that a lot of people were buying into was that it was aliens had abducted them and just straight up warped their car, because it seemed like they just disappeared. And then like 20 years later, a sonar search and recovery crew finds them in like I think it was a river off the side of the road. They just like, at some point something happened and they drove off into the water, sunk, water covered them up, and they weren't found for 20 years. But some people were more willing to believe that aliens abducted them because like, I don't know what happened, therefore aliens, you know. A lot of missing peoples end up in water. Yeah, it's such a good cover. Like, and unless you have very specific equipment, you just can't find them. My father-in-law, he has a boat that has like those same sonar things that are used in those search and recovery missions. And one of the things about it is like cars that go in fresh or boats that go in fresh, before moss grows on them to absorb the sonar, it just reflects right off. So it doesn't, like, it looks like a rock. There was a time, like I said, we go on vacation up to a lake in Minnesota every year. And at one point we were up there and a boat had sunk, like, just not a big boat, but just like almost like a rowboat kind of thing. And it had sunk and overturned under the water, just like 10 feet down at the bottom of the lake. But he's doing the sonar scan and he's like, what is that? And on the sonar scanner, it just looks like almost a shiny rock. Like it doesn't even look that weird, but we knew there was a boat down there because the water was particularly clear and you could see down and see the boat there. But on the sonar, it just looked like a really weird rock. But it's because all the sonar was just bouncing off of it because it had just recently sunk. Whereas on older stuff where the moss has grown and it absorbs the sonar pings, you actually get a much clearer image. So with cars that go into lakes or rivers and stuff, they'll go and do the search and recovery and they'll scan it and it'll just look like there's a rock on the bottom of the river or lake when it's actually the car, but the sonar just can't see it because it reflects off. So in some ways, which is weird, but in some ways with that sonar stuff, it's actually easier to find things years and years after it went in the water compared to when it's fresh. Like there was that one case, Adventures with Purpose. That's what it is. So this channel, if you've never seen them, Adventures with Purpose, it's fantastic. Sometimes it's a little like really dramatic. But with this, like they actually go and they will find these cars, like these missing people, and they go and they actually find their cars in lakes and can save them. But there was, well, not save them, but recover them. But there's a lot of these, and there's one in particular I'm thinking of that was like really, I mean, I guess this is another good example. So this kid disappeared and left like a note for his family. And so they speak with like his mom, and straight up, like he's been missing for 4 years. They show up, do this little introductory video talking with her and why they came to this boat landing, why they think this has potential as a location. And at one point he says, okay, I'm going to go and I'll be back. And this other guy starts talking to her and time goes by. And then at some point, where is it? Right here.
And that will be within that 5-mile radius, because he would often finish work and then...
And that's also on West Broadway.
Yes, and he would stop by the dairy to visit with her before he came home.
And in regards to the money that was left along with three of him at all?
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you something. What is, they put down that red marker there. What does that mean?
That means they have a car.
So within like less than 20 minutes, they find a car under the water surface, and you can see on the sonar.
That's what you're seeing.
That's what they see on the sonar. But after a little bit of time has gone by and some of the algae starts to grow on the car and stuff, you can see these scans that are much clearer. You can tell this is a car. But on these sonar, if it's a fresh car, this might just look like weirdly blown out and just distorted. Really, really weird. But they check it, they go down, they dive on it, they get the license plate, and it is the car. And then they actually like pull it up and recover the car. And he was in it. Like after all that time, they actually recover him and bring him home. But like they found him within 20 minutes. It's crazy. It's wild. But that it makes you really wonder, like all those lakes and rivers that you go by, like how many other things might be hiding in there. It'll break your brain. Yeah, then all the alien people go, yeah, aliens got another guy. Yeah. So, Adventures with Purpose. Do recommend you check them out. Okay. Okay, I think we wrap up with this, and then I'm gonna go give Finley his medication. So let's talk about this real quick. Back to games. News segment. So let's touch on this. Obsidian's Avowed is, quote, similar in length to The Outer Worlds. Players can expect a roughly similar experience, says the game director. What's you guys' feeling on Avowed? What's your impression? Because I'm trying to get excited for it, but really I just feel the same way I felt. I mean, again, kind of about the Outer Worlds. I just feel like there's something about it that just is a little off. Not to say it'll be bad, but I just don't think it's coming together in the way I was hoping. You know, I keep waiting for that one hook that's going to be like, oh, this is why it's like a must play, but I just haven't really seen that yet. I get the feeling, yeah, kind of like you're saying, Papa, I get the feeling that this is probably one of those like 7, 8 out of 10 games. It's good, not great, not bad, just good. Something you probably play over the course of a weekend or something. Might have fun with it. But I think people got their hopes up with the original announcement trailer and some of the other statements that were made early on in the development of the game, where they were hopeful that this would be like Obsidian's Elden Ring. Because I remember, or not Elden Ring, Elder Scrolls. Because you guys remember when that first trailer dropped, people were like, so Outer Worlds was like their first foray into trying to make their own sort of Fallout. What if this is their attempt at making their own like Skyrim? People got really excited. Turns out it's almost certainly not going to be on that scale. The game director is suggesting it's much closer to Outer Worlds, which, if you don't recall, was about 13 hours for the main story and 26 with all side content. And that's what the game director said, Carrie Patel. She said the best comparison for Avowed in terms of scope is Outer Worlds. Players can expect a roughly similar experience, just like Outer Worlds, depending on what kind of difficulty they play on and how they explore and invest in side content, versus just sticking to the main crit path missions. Okay. Yeah, this is, despite the game taking place within the same universe, Patel told Game Informer that players don't have to have played those games, specifically the other Pillars of Eternity games, to get started in this RPG. Quote, we're glad to have our returning fans, but we expect that for many players, Avowed is going to be their first introduction into the world of Eora, and we're accounting for that. So Avowed takes place a few years after the end of Dreadfire, which was our game just before this. There are a couple of characters that are returning, that returning players are going to recognize, which they alluded to in some of those gameplay previews and things. But as you can see, I mean, in terms of scope, 13 and a half hours, 26 and a half. Completion is 40 hours if you're doing absolutely everything. I think Outer Worlds landed, you know, it wasn't bad or like poorly received. Seems like the people who have played it have generally liked it, but it was clunky. It was not like, it was not perfect, but it was good. You know, little clunky in spots. Scope was much more limited than I think people were expecting, but it was a fun foray. And if you have like Game Pass, I recommend you check it out. Yeah, Nikki Chicky said it's okay. There are 7 out of 10 games. Well, it seems like after last year, especially where we had so many 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s, people kind of got accustomed to that. And so now they are really frustrated that there are not more like masterpiece grade games releasing this year. And it's like, that was very exceptional. For years and years, 7 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s were like the most common games, and they'd come out and you'd have things that you'd change or things that were not great about them, but you could still have fun with it. It feels like now, if ever a game releases and it's not a 9 out of 10 or higher, people are like, wow, they really fell off. You know, like even to a certain extent, like a Starfield is like that has a pretty, I think currently a fairly negative sentiment in the mass media and broader gaming community. It's still reviewed pretty good. Like 8 out of 10, yeah, it's not a masterpiece, but that's a review score that no one can shake a stick at. That's not bad. 6 out or 6.8. user scores don't really tell you much of anything nowadays with all the mass downvote campaigns and stuff that happen. So you never really know what you're looking at. But 83, not bad. Not bad at all. But nowadays it just feels like if the game is not 10 out of 10, it's garbage. You know, it's like, wow, trash. It's like I've had plenty of meals. There's a restaurant near us, a Mexican restaurant. I like going there because I crave carne asada. Every once in a while, I just get that craving and I need it. I need a fix. And so I'll go and I'll order the carne asada and it'll show up and it won't ever be great. It's always okay. But it fits the hunger I have. It scratches that itch. So even though it isn't the best carne asada I've ever had, it does what it needs to do to satisfy my hunger for carne asada. And I think something like this is perhaps going to be similar to that carne asada from that restaurant, where it's probably not the best cut of meat. It probably isn't cooked correctly. The serving sizes are wildly inconsistent from visit to visit. And maybe the water that they serve you even smells vaguely of bleach. But you eat it and you're still like, that was a good meal. That was a good meal. I'm okay with that. You know? And with this, I imagine there's going to be lots of weird little quirks with it, but I think it will serve the purpose. And if you're looking for a little RPG fix that's like 15 hours long, you can get it here. And honestly, it might be refreshing to have an RPG that's not like 50, 60, 70 hours long. Oh, well, Luke took his chance to throw restaurant frequency. I mean, I still go to the restaurant. I still buy stuff at that restaurant pretty frequently because there's also not many restaurants near me. But yeah, it's like not amazing at all. And like sometimes it's straight bad. Other times it's good. Most of the time it's okay. But it does its job, you know? And there's a lot of restaurants like that. Like we one time went to visit some family in Minnesota. And in Minnesota, in like the middle of nowhere, one of the things they do is after like church on Sundays, they all hop in the car and they go to a restaurant. And no doubt, like I'm not joking, the restaurant is like straight out of Seinfeld. It's just called Restaurant. And it is attached to a gas station. And to me, it seems weird to go and like go to a restaurant that's built into the same place I refill my car. That's just weird to me. But we go there, you order the food, and it's just cafeteria grade food or like bowling alley food. But everybody goes and has a good time. Your stomach might hurt a little bit after the meal, but hey, it's okay. And you can still have a good time there. Like, if I'm a critic and I'm evaluating it, yeah, it's going to get a bad score. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a place for a restaurant called Restaurant, you know? I just think, like, with so much of this stuff, I've tried to explain it to people sometimes with, like, even Hellblade 2. Hellblade 2 is a, super, super short game. And honestly, I don't think it does much of anything except graphics better than the first game. But I still think there's a place for it. Like if you're looking for something that you can finish in an afternoon and you just want some like really cool cinematic, beautiful thing to sink your teeth into for an afternoon, you can go through it and probably walk away like, okay, that was cool. Especially if you're getting it through Game Pass and not paying $40-$50 for it. Like there is a place for it. If I'm putting a review score on it, it's probably not going to score that high, but there's still a place for it in the industry. My concern recently with the industry is that it feels like there is not really a way for games to be viable unless they are masterpiece levels. Like hearing this, I would imagine Outer World or Obsidian, little Freudian slip there. I would assume that Obsidian's Avowed is going to land at like that 7-8 out of 10 range. And I hope it's still like worth making and it's still profitable and they can still Be like, okay, no layoffs, we're good. We can move on to the next project. But unfortunately, nowadays, it just feels like everything is either a masterpiece or it's a flop. Feels, maybe this is just, perception is tricking me, but it feels like if you're not a masterpiece, then that's where you land. But then again, the other thing that complicates this is it's a Game Pass title. Game Pass titles, it's more about engagement, hours, or even minutes played. It's much less about copies sold. So this could be a game that, like, at that 7 or 8 out of 10 mark actually does remarkably well on a Game Pass because people are not going and buying it. They're rather going through Game Pass to download it and play it so they don't have to risk spending the money and wasting it up front. So this could actually be like the perfect game for Game Pass. There's a weird world where like Game Pass is actually most profitable on like controversial games that people just play to see if it's that bad, and games that are good but not so good that you want to buy them full price on Steam, but rather you want to sign up for Game Pass to try them, and then you forget to cancel your subscription, and all of a sudden a year has passed and you've been signed up for too long. It's a whole thing. Like there's a weird alternative universe, maybe not even alternative, but there's a way where I could totally see Game Pass being more successful with less masterpieces and more okay games. Like if we're looking just at Game Pass, Xbox probably, would prefer if you also just bought it, but they also want those Xbox Game Pass signups. Yeah, they're working on Outer Worlds 2 at the same time. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, if Phil has not like grabbed them by the throats and be like, you're making a Fallout game, I don't know what he's doing. That's such a layup. Even if the game, like realistically, the game probably doesn't end up being a 10 out of 10 or anything, even if Obsidian makes a Fallout game. But that just makes so much sense in terms of fan service. You better believe if they announced it, like not E3, at their showcase next year, if they announced that they've got another Fallout game coming from Obsidian, people would lose their minds. Like that instantly wins the show. Maybe not, because Naughty Dog will be there and Santa Monica is probably going to be there. And so there's going to be some fierce competition next year, but that will at least be a big get if they get that. Are they AAA? They fit more in the AA space. And that's usually reflected in the pricing too. Like they're $40, $50 games. When you're in the $70 range, it better be AAA. Xbox is back. Well, Xbox has good games, games that look good, but we have to see how they launch, because a lot of other games that they've shown in years past looked good, but then we know how they ended up, Should they be rated differently as AA? No, I think like in the review, there should be a distinction. Hey, this is a cheaper game. This is smaller in scope. It's always stupid when people like look at a AA game or an indie game and they're like, well, this game, doesn't hold a candle to Red Dead. And it's like, yeah, it's not trying to. It was never going to. So, it's tricky. But okay, fam. I said we were going to do a shorter stream today. I actually ended up going about 45 minutes longer than I meant to. I've got to go give Mr. Finley Cat his medication before his vet visit. So I got to go do that. And then I've got to film for this Starfield video. So we will call it there. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me. Kind of a weird stream, but it's okay. We had a great time. I had a good time. I love you all. Yeah, we'll say hello to Mr. Cat. Sure will. Much love. I will see you guys in the next stream, next video, whatever happens first. I'll see you. Thank you for making my dreams a reality as always. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.